Thanks, guys. Wonderful. Great, guys. Well, it is just a blessing to do this last round this morning before just having a wee bit of a shutdown period for a couple of weeks. And most of you have been around the last couple of weeks where we've just taken time looking through the beginning of James and just really looking at, like, what is the Father doing when we go through difficult periods in our lives, when we face challenges? What's the Father working out, and what is he growing us in? So we've kind of looked a little bit at some of the kind of the what and the why. And I just thought we'd take a little bit of time this morning to look at, in a sense, some of the real basics of the how. And I'm not going to go into this in massive detail. I think I'm going to not give you a list, but almost just some thoughts to mull around and some things to take away and chat through with others and with the Father about. But I think, God is just so infinitely practical, isn't he, in equipping us as to how to go through these times. And, I love the fact that, when, sometimes we can describe, feeling like that sense of when we do face difficulties. But, God has enabled us, empowered us to be a people that do not feel like we're on a trampoline where it's a bit like we're like this going up and down, but it's like climbing a mountain. And most of you, I'm sure, at some point will have climbed a fell or a mountain or hiked an Alp or something at some point in your lives. And just that sense of, you hit points along the way where you've got to stop and rest. You hit setbacks where you've got to re-navigate, re-find your directions and your footing. And honestly, it takes real strength, doesn't it, in time. And when the boys were young, this comes with a warning. You may want to Google it. I actually found it on YouTube this morning, but I warn you, if you watch it, it gets in your head. When the boys were little, somebody gave us a video of a thing called Salty, the singing songbook. He was a songbook who sang. Some might remember him. He was blue and annoying, but as in blue colour, not bloom and annoying. And but he and it's something that has stuck with me. This little song, because we used to listen to it all the time, where he's taking these kids up a mountain, and he sings a song about how do you climb a mountain, one step at a time, like it literally is. And it points, it is really hard work, but it's in just that one step in front of another, taking rest when you need to, one step in front of another, that we get to that point where we can turn around and look back and see how far we've come. So some of, what we're looking at this morning, and even in a sense in psychology, they know from research that we can develop resilience through practices, it's almost like exercising a muscle. You develop muscle memory when you do things in a consistent way. And we referenced last week, just that quote, that book that Eugene Peterson has written about, obedience and in one direction over a really long time. When we do the same things in a direction and they become not just habits, but who we are, because we're working from a place of they're our values. They're the things that we love and long to do because of the way that they are strengthening us. And so when a few weeks back, Ro talked about from John 15 and referred to where Jesus talks about abiding in him. And guys, we know that when you look at that word, it has all the connotations of being rooted in. It's the same thing. It's about lodging. Another translation puts it an element. It's got the element of time to endure. You're developing time to endure or continuing to be present in something. There's just this beautiful sense of when we abide, when we get rooted down, we are remaining present for the long haul in one direction as we journey with Jesus. And, we've been called, haven't we, to be apprentices under him. It's a word that we've been coming across a little bit recently. We would talk a lot about discipleship, but we love that concept of being, we are apprentices. We're in relationship with Jesus. We're learning from him. We're learning to be like him. And we're just learning to follow the way. You know, Paul in Acts 24:14, when he's defending himself, he makes reference to just being a follower of the way. It's a way of life. And the same word he uses there for the way, or it can be described as a pathway or a journey or a direction, is the same word that Jesus uses when he says, I am the way. So Jesus is calling us to, in a sense, follow a journey, but it is just literally following him. I'm it's not about, even calling ourselves Christians, or how much or how little we attend church or anything else. It's just this beautiful relationship of day by day following after his way. And as we do that, through these rhythms that he gives us, these ways of doing life, the author Andy Crouch refers to it as these kind of practices, if we can call them that. They are there to guard our hearts and guide our lives. Sometimes, I don't know about you, because I grew up in church, and so sometimes that can get a little bit caught up in rules and regulations, or feels a little bit like the have to's or the ought to's or the must do's or the should do's. And it is nothing of that. This is just it's the way of living that Jesus sort of invites us into, that will just guard our hearts and will guide our pathway as we walk with him. And as we do that day in, day out, over time, it strengthens to the point where it is like climbing that mountain just a little bit at a time. When I was in my, not quite a teenager, sort of around the age of 11 and 12, I used to do a lot of athletics. I competed at the New Zealand Athletics Games. I was a sprinter. And from that, I was taken on by a Polish trainer who was training me for the years to come. One of the goals at that time was to be was the Commonwealth Games. That's what they had put in front of us. Within 2 rounds. And so there was a sort of goal of something I was heading towards at the time. And what I just want to encourage us in, guys, as we look at some of these things that the Father, these ways, these practices that the Father puts in front of us, when I was training, and the trainer he would say to me, Miriam, you need to, he would talk about my technique or my style, or you need to try this and not do that. I didn't take it as a criticism or a failure of what I wasn't able to do. I saw it as an encouragement of what he was calling me into, that if I walked into these things, if I put into practice the things that he was speaking to me about, that I would become, or had the potential, to become a really, really good runner. And so I really want to encourage our hearts this morning, guys, as we listen to these things, for them not to become a place where it feels like I'm not doing all of those, or somehow I'm failing, or that they would feel like some kind of a burden. These are amazing practices that bring us into a greater sense of freedom. And they outline for us, in a sense, just a way that we can move forward, that we can actually grow, that we can strengthen and deepen our roots in the Father. So I really want you to hear this morning from a place of deep encouragement, because what we're going to do is just take a little bit of time to go through some of these things. And it might feel a bit like a list, or a bit like 10 ways to improve a better you and all of that, but it's not. This is not a sort of self-help fix-it kind of guide. These are just some things to take away and mull around, and because at the moment we all have ways that we're living, don't we? We all have a way of life right now. And I think the question that we're just coming back to the Father with is this way of life, are the things that I'm, doing, following or not following, bringing me into those places of greater intimacy, of further strengthening. And so I suppose it is a little bit like a sort of almost an internal health check. and just allowing the Father to take these things and from a place of invitation and excitement to say there's so much more in these things, and as we do them, our roots are going to go down even deeper into Him. So if you might have a piece of paper and a pen, you might want to jot these down, because as I say, I'm not going to unpack them. Each one of them literally is probably weeks and weeks where we could chat about it and unpack it together and go right through the word looking for loads of scriptures. And I'd encourage you just to do that for yourself, or grab another person and say, guys, why don't we do this? Why don't we see what the Father has to say about these things? But this is about us looking at how do we intentionally keep moving into more. How do we, we have plans about all sorts of other things. So how do we intentionally strengthen our muscles in these areas? So the first one, and always the biggest one, because everything comes back to Jesus just being first and foremost in our lives and in everything we do. So this, it's intimacy, developing intimacy. And, some of the very simple ways we can do that is just beginning our day in that place. It doesn't end there. I grew up where, it was in a sense all about the quiet time, so to speak. And those are beautiful places where we do set aside specific time to be with the Father. But equally, guys, intimacy develops over a whole lifetime, doesn't it, in a million different ways and practices of getting to know somebody. And in the same way as we get to know, our human beings, friends, family along the way, it comes through us asking questions. It comes with us stopping long enough to listen. It comes with us, we look at photos, we look back over what somebody's done in their life. There's so many ways of exploring where we get to that place of what is real connection. And what Andy was saying before, where loneliness and the things people are experiencing right now is not just because they are behind closed doors or shut away. Loneliness is a very complex thing and there's many parts to it, but one of the key things is that it is about to what degree we feel known and what degree we feel understood and heard by those around us. And I genuinely, it's no different in our relationship with God, how we get to know Him, how He gets to know us. Happens in exactly the same way, where we go back to the Word and learn about Him, what he's done over the centuries, who He is, what He's like. But we ask Him questions, we give time to let Him respond, we let Him ask us questions and we respond. But really encourage us to find that place of connection. And often first thing in the day, we all know that it will often set our day on a very different trajectory if we take that time aside. And along with that, in that intimacy, is, guys, continuing to be people who are free to lament. Lamenting just means that real honesty of heart, where we don't try and shy away from the difficulties or the difficult feelings, but we allow God, and with God, we pour out our hearts to Him because He is deeply interested in those areas. And it's only in that place of vulnerability and honesty that we can be truly known and know as well. So continue to be. And if you find that a struggle, I just encourage you, chat to somebody else about it. Ask the Father about it. This is not a in a sense, it doesn't lessen the power of Jesus by us having struggles and challenges. It just brings the true picture into balance, where we are people who struggle and we have a Father who cares and journeys with us through all of it, and has ways to bring us through that. So number 2 is having a ritual or a way of gratitude and thankfulness. And, this, we know thankfulness, the power of it is all about recognizing what we have anxiety comes in because anxiety is based often around future thoughts of what we don't have, or an uncertainty of we're not sure what we have. And that's where anxiety, will often get a foothold. And so staying in that place regularly of thankfulness and gratitude for things that we do have keeps us, really centered around what we already have. And it brings us back to that place of trust with people and with God, because it's in that place where we're like, I know what God can do because this is what he's already done for me. So I can stand in that place of certainty because I know this is who he is. I know this is how he interacts with us. And guys, I'd really encourage you to consider too. I went on a walk this week with a really special friend, and we just had just an amazing point in the conversation where we were able to thank one another openly for some of the things that we've brought into each other's lives. And it's probably a conversation that we had never had before. But I know for both of us, like what it does also within our relationships with one another. So thanking God for what we have and what he's done, but also, being a people who continually thank one another, going beyond, in a sense, just the spending time together in friendship, but actually, taking your words and allowing them to be words of encouragement of, I'm so thankful for you because... it's really powerful. And as we practice that and tell those stories, it really does feed the soul, and it feeds our encouragement, and it keeps us being strengthened in so many different ways. This week when we did the women's conference with Northern Ireland, Ellie Mumford did this brilliant little thing. But what I love about, for those who don't, they led the Vineyard movement in Britain for a long time, and she talked all about celebrating. Talked a lot about her and her husband keep a bottle of champagne in the fridge now permanently that they pull out on Zoom calls and things. Simply, she said you might want to use lemonade, but being who they are, she was like, no, we wouldn't use lemonade, it's champagne. But just that sense of having that attitude of, we're always going to have this present in our home because there is always something worth celebrating, either together or with somebody else. And so they regularly crack open the champagne when they're on Zoom calls at the moment to just celebrate over people. So looking, what are the things at the moment going on around you that just in the simple day by day you can celebrate over. Number 3 is sleep and exercise. I'm not going to go into that. There's all sorts of amazing things that happen when we walk. Just the benefits, as I say, I won't, you guys are all aware of that, but keeping up with those practices of just looking after those simple physical things that we can do throughout. And this is not just about COVID, this is for our lifetime, where our physical health is kept, strong, then it strengthens us in all other ways. Number 4 is looking for ways to have a daily, where possible, focal practice. And that is about where we let go of multitasking. I don't know if you guys are anything like me, but I can have a billion things going through my head most of the time. And it can be a challenge for some of us to step away from the multitasking and lay it down. But the practice of choosing something where it just becomes for a moment or for a little period of time in the day, a focal point where we let go of all other things, and that includes our circumstances. So where this can strengthen us is that, when we are in challenging moments or walking through something that is really tough, we're not talking about denying it or repressing it, we're just talking about laying it aside. So that we can focus into something that is good for our soul, that's refreshing for us, and just brings a little bit of life back in that moment. And sometimes we just need to remember it's not selfish, and it's good for us. It's not that we continually need to be pouring out, we also need to be pouring in as well. Number 5 is just, we've talked a lot about this over the last few weeks, so I won't go into it, but just relational touch points, guys, with good friends, and then with community as well, as we're doing this morning and in lots of other ways through the week, having those places where you are known. And if you've only got limited time at the moment and with lots going on, you know, I'd really encourage you just to keep up with those people around you that really know you, who really stand with you, who understand your journey, will pray with you, will pray for you. Yeah, those real heart friends that, you know, they're just really key at times like this, and always, but just not to give up on those, and make space for them. We've talked about, I think, this before, but and somebody's been on TV recently in the last couple of days. I've seen him, the clinical director for medicine in Scotland. I can't remember his name, but he was at a Vineyard conference a couple of years ago that we went to, some of us went to, and amazing man, and has obviously been, and you know, has had to carry a lot over the years in terms of his roles in life. And one of the things when they asked him, you know, what has kept you going? He said for the last 25 years, without fail, apart from holiday and illness, he has met with the same group of men. 6 of them get together for dinner one night a week for 25 years. And this is someone who holds a role like that because he had seen early on the value of keeping that consistency with good friends that were going to speak into his life and help strengthen him through, you know, through the things that he journeyed. So guys, if you haven't got that, seek it out. Start to ask the Father, you know, who is there? Who's in this room? You know, it's not always easy because we often have to start from scratch. And it's a bit awkward to start with sometimes. And, you know, it takes a lot of time and involvement with people to get to those places of depth where we can do it. But we just have to start somewhere. So if it feels like it is a lack in your life at the moment, then I'd really encourage you to ask the Father and just to spend some time thinking about how you could begin to reach out to somebody or a few people around you. Number 6, and I'm going to have to really speed this up. Guys, we need to really, I think, consider managing, obviously, you know, what we allow into our minds through a season like this, you know, what we spend time dwelling on. A lot of us, I know, have gotten to a point, maybe sometimes we are actually a bit sick of the news and probably turn it off more than we did in the early stages of COVID. But some, you know, some people still, and there's a lot of stuff flying around of, you know, sort of conspiracy theories and all sorts of things that may or may not be true. And guys, I think it's so important for us to be informed about what's going on in our world. It really matters. We're not wanting to be people who shut down or switch off. We really do need to know what's going on, but we need to guard as well what we allow our minds to sort of spend time around when there are so many other positive and things that we can be doing to both, you know, encourage ourselves, encourage other people. So just checking in, you know, how am I, you know, spending my time when I'm looking at news, when I'm having conversations with others, you know, where do we go with just being informed, but then turning that to a place where, you know, we turn it to hope, we turn it to prayer, we turn it to working through things in a positive way. And number 7, and we've started this on our 40 days, the opportunity just for a little bit of weekly fasting, but prayer and fasting, guys, as a rhythm, it strengthens us. John Mark Comer, I've not heard it, I don't know if this is his phrase or if he was quoting somebody else, but he put fasting, he described it like this: fasting is a way of praying with your body. And I hadn't heard it described like that, but I like that as a way of, you know, why do we fast? It's that place of laying our lives down in a very physical way as a sacrifice, of inviting the Father to come and do more, for us to focus our our senses in a very, sort of tangible way as we let go of whether it be food or other things. And every Friday through this 40-day period, we're just encouraging us to come around fasting together on a Friday, to ask the Father to break through, in our world, in our own lives, in the lives of people that are around us. It's a very powerful thing, and if it's something you've never done, I'd really encourage you just to chat with others about what their experiences may have been, and go to the Word and see what is it that Jesus says when he's talking about fasting. The next one, compassionate giving, or altruism, we might refer to it as. Guys, it is it goes such a long way, I think, for our own encouragement, and obviously for the people who are receiving it, when we give with no motive. When we see what's going on around us and we step into somebody else's world, it changes our thinking, and you guys will have experienced this in a million ways, whether it's, Rachel with the amazing scarves that are going out. If you haven't heard about that, talk to Rachel. It's just brilliant what's going on. Then we go to the servicemen. And all of you will have different stories of how this is happening. And we've just been finding it at the listening space, as we take time to listen to others, where we just come with a compassionate heart towards another person, the power of that. And it really does strengthen us and encourage us in that. Romans 12, guys, verse 10 to 13, it says this: be devoted to tenderly loving your fellow believers as members of one family. Try to outdo yourselves in respect and honour for one another. I love that. So I give us that challenge this week. Another version said, try and outdo one another. I didn't go with that one because I was like, bit of healthy competition's good. Don't want to get into comparison. But hey, some good, healthy, try and outdo yourself. What does that look like for you personally? Because this is not about we need a bar that we move to or hit. This is about, where is my starting point right now, and how can I outdo myself today? How can I outdo myself tomorrow in honouring and loving and in compassion to those around me? So give it away, guys. It is something that deeply strengthens our own faith and journey. And then lastly, meaningful purpose. Guys, hold on to the things that the Father has called you to do, whatever they may be, and they might not, and the very specifics may not look fully possible right now, in the way that they would have done at one time with some of the restrictions, but there will be creative ways for you to be able to continue to be all that the Father has called you to be. When it talked about in Luke 4, when Jesus, where it states, what he was called to do. And we'll reflect this in so many different ways, but all of us are called to the same things. It says that, he was chosen to preach the message of good news to the poor. Jesus was sent to announce pardon to prisoners and recovery of sight to the blind, to set the burdened and battered free, to announce this is God's year to act. And we get called into that, guys. None of us should ever feel or believe that we do not have purposeful meaning to bring into the world that we are a part of. In our own families, in the workplaces that we're in, the neighbourhoods that we're a part of. There is so much purpose for you at this time and in the season, and I just keep encouraging you to ask the Father, where is it right now? He brings up some, even this week, just talking to people, some stories around, people coming across folks in unexpected situations where all of a sudden they might be able to do some life-giving in that space, that God is surprising some of us with places that we've not expected, to be able to bring that meaning and that purposeful interaction with those around us and loving them extravagantly. So I just encourage us to be looking, where are those places? So this is all about, like I said, guys, starting with where we are. not where we think we should be. So if there's any of that in the room, we just say no to those thoughts right now. Any thoughts of images or people that we look at and think, well, I'm not doing what they're doing, I should be like that, or I should be at that level, or I feel like I'm only taking baby steps in this. We bless that, we encourage that, because this is all about just continuing to move on and deepening. You know, you might be at the start of that mountain, you might be halfway up and exhausted, you might be feeling like you're nearing some of the tops, and there's still a few more maybe to go and explore. But we just want to journey that together and keep encouraging one another in these practices. So we're just going to take a little bit of time in breakout rooms, but one of the questions that I think that we can be asking ourselves in the season, and you might want to ask one another this now, or have a ponder, or just really take the time to pray for each other, you know, going into this week. But you know, it's coming back to, like I say, not setting our own standards, guys, and beating ourselves up or putting a heavy burden on ourselves. It's coming back to the Father and asking him, you know, what am I capable of in this season? And I really encourage you to ask that with a very open heart. There have been times when I have really felt like I'm struggling, but the Father's encouraged me, not because he's trying to, in a sense, overwork me, but it's almost like he's like, you know, lovely, you're capable of a little bit more. You'll be okay. I've got you in this. I'm with you, and he'll encourage me a little bit further than I thought I was capable of. So really asking the Father, you know, what does he see? And where is we don't ever want to push into panic zones, but we do want to keep being people who journey into those stretch zones. So identify what are those, in a sense, space that you're working in right now. What are the limits, if you like, emotionally, relationally, or even physically? What is it that I can do? And then we let that be enough. But in all of it, we know that he's moving us on in these things in order to strengthen us so that we can go even further and press on a little bit higher. So that's, I'm sorry that in a way that it's a massive rush through, and leave it with you to ponder. But I think I know, and there are many of these areas, guys, that I would, you know, put myself at only a 1 or a 2, not a 10, and others maybe a 6, 7, whatever. You know, we're going to feel we've got strengths and places to grow. Each of us is going to be different. So just encourage us towards that honest journey of the heart, because it's for our strengthening and growth, and it's going to really be for our good, and from that place, you know, for the blessing of those, you know, around us in the city as well. So.
Ruth, thank you so much.